welcome to our 4.17 and 4.18 review. Let's dive right in. Our first essential question to guide this review is for section 14, section 17, what were the chief international issues facing Europe in the 17th century? So, Louis XIV was the dominant figure of the 17th century, on the throne for 72 years, who made France the greatest state in Europe. His political, economic, and cultural policies became the model for other rulers as French language, art, culture, and style dominated all over Europe. Louis expanded French territories to include Alsace and Lorraine and the Franche-Comté. And here are where those two regions are within France. So the chief international issue facing Europe in 1665 to 1700, a good part of Louis XIV's reign, was who would take over the Kingdom of Spain when its Immaculate King, Charles II, would die. Charles was brother-in-law to Louis, and on this basis, Louis planned to put his grandson on the throne of Spain to unify the two crowns into one. To counter this universal monarchy, the Europeans enforced the concept of balance of power, just as they had previously against the universal Habsburg monarchy. This concept was based on the idea that the goal of each state was to maintain its independence and avoid being dominated by any greater state, and that to prevent the ascendancy of any single strong state, the others would form an unofficial alliance to create a counterweight to the dominant power. Such combinations were usually complicated and often unexpected. Many small states, wealthy from trade or holding strategic locations, could play important roles in such shifting alliances. All right, so here we have the leader of the forces seeking to restrict Louis XIV's power was William II, the Prince of Orange and ruler of Holland, who later became King of England. The Dutch and the French were in a deep contest in the latter half of the 17th century. All right, so later, after you finish this video, we're going to watch this Tom Ritchie video that will go further in depth about Louis XIV, the Sun King of France. All right, so let's review 4.18, the Dutch Republic. First question is, what were the noteworthy cultural achievements of the Dutch Republic? So the United Provinces, as the Netherlands were called at that time, was not the only republic in Europe, but certainly the wealthiest and the most important. The long battle with Spain, fought more with their wealth than with their men and material, forged the particular Dutch mentality and sense of nationality in what was perhaps the most comfortable, secure state in Europe for the 17th century. Both their cultural achievements and commercial success were unparalleled. We have important intellectuals of the period, including the political thinker Hugo Grotius and the philosopher Baruch Spinoza. Other intellectuals articulated progressive attitudes on such issues as witchcraft and the education of women. Science in the Netherlands also flourished. Leeuwenhoek invented the microscope, birthing modern biological sciences. The Dutch had already invented the telescope. We also had the Dutch made the pendulum clocks, discovered the rings of Saturn, and discovered the wave theory of light. In the visual arts, the Dutch were superb. Three masters in particular were noteworthy. We have Vermeer, noted on his portrayals of ordinary scenes, particularly women. If you look on page 154, there's an example there in your textbook. Frans Hals, famous for his jolly portraits, and Rembrandt, superb self-portraitist. Vermeer's geographer, with its globe, map of the world, pondering scholar lit by sunlight and holding a mathematical tool and tapestry in the forefront, highlight Dutch involvement in the world. While some artists from the area became associated with the Catholic Baroque, portraying religious themes or royalty, much Dutch art focused on the quotidian. The Dutch also adopted religious toleration in 1632. Religious toleration included the various groups of Calvinists, Catholics, Mennonites, and Jews as well, although the latter had fewer political rights. Second question is, what political, economic, and military factors led to Dutch success and later decline? So, first, we have the Dutch dominated the seas in the early 17th century. Their 10,000 ships journeyed globally, trading and establishing colonies such as Java in modern-day Indonesia, Manhattan, modern-day New York City, Brazil, and Cape of Good Hope in South Africa, among others. For 2 centuries, the Dutch were the only foreigners tolerated by isolationist Japan. The Dutch East India Company was created, and soon thereafter the Dutch West India Company. In 1609, the Bank of Amsterdam was established, maintaining firm standards for their gold florins, which then became the international currency and helping make Amsterdam the financial center of Europe for the next 2 centuries. The United Provinces had a very loosely centralized system, with each province holding tightly onto its prerogatives, each with its own stadtholder. The head of the Orange family, descended of the much-loved William the Silent, the stadtholder of Holland, was in the end elected stadtholder of all the provinces. In 1673, 6 provinces voted to have the position made hereditary in the House of Orange. Nevertheless, the United Provinces remained decentralized for another 100 years. The Dutch began to face, let's see here, all right, moving forward. All right, so the Dutch decline began to face substantial economic competition from England and France. In 1651, the English passed a Navigation Act, which required that all ships bringing goods in and out of England be English or producing the goods, thereby eliminating the Dutch, who, too small to be producers, had made their wealth on transporting other countries' goods. The Dutch began a series of wars with England, losing New Amsterdam, pictured on the left, in 1664, and with France. The Dutch brought the balance of power to bear, forging an alliance with the Habsburgs and others to outmaneuver Louis XIV. Lastly, William III of Orange became King of England in 1689 as a result of the Glorious Revolution. This would prove a decisive check on French ambitions. All right, next, if you have the question, what is a stadtholder, you can also watch this video that will be linked on Google Classroom.